Hello, welcome to Spark Up Podcast, Spark Up Africa podcast. On this page, we talk about Africa, Africans, both at home and in the diaspora. And we focus on issues that concern Africans. And today, I'll be looking at this question of education. Is education important for individuals? We and it's going to be a comparative analysis looking at education in Nigeria, for instance, and equally in the UK here. Now, you want to understand that practical education is important. And in Europe or in UK here, practical education is introduced from early stage. Whereas at home, education is more theoretical than practical. And so there are people that argue that Mark Zuckerberg did not go to university, Elon Musk did not finish his university, Bill Gates did not finish his university, and they're all university dropouts. They started their businesses and today they are successful. So many Nigerians use that argument to to enhance the notion that education is not important, is not relevant for one's success in life, for one's career growth. Now, the question is, what kind of education are we talking about? What kind of education was Elon Musk exposed to? What kind of education was Mark Zuckerberg exposed to as early as possible in their lives? And what kind of education was most of these people that left university exposed to? And don't forget, the universities they dropped out of Stanford, Oxford, some of these top first class universities in the world. Number one, to even access some of these schools is not something for everybody, it's for the elite. And number two, these schools, by just going to 100 level, what they will expose you to from 100 level, the practical experience from 100 level is something that can arm you for the rest of your life. And again, we have not considered the nursery schools they've attended, secondary schools they attended, the colleges, because in Western societies, they have, after graduating from nursery, primary school, you go to secondary school, then you go to college for 2 years. And in college, it is purely practical. Anything you want to do, you are exposed to the practical aspect of it. So you are equipped already with the practical knowledge. But if you look at most of these people again, 90% of the people that work in their companies are equally graduates. And so we cannot rule out, especially if you are from a poor family, you're from a poor society, you can't rule out the power of education in your individual transformation, in social transformation, in your career growth. You can't rule out the power of education. There's the success of Mark Zuckerberg, the success of Bill Gates, the success of Elon Musk. Does it mean that young individuals do not need education? No. As much as it is within your power, education is relevant, education is good. And some of them, if you look at their parents, the parent that brought them up, they gave them so much technological exposure as early as possible in their life. They were exposed to technology very early. The environment they grew up equally matters. You grew up in an environment where your educational system is theoretical. Some of the things you are being taught, you've never seen them practical, how they work, how they behave, how they operate. You read chemistry in school. from primary school to university, you have not seen some of the elements, you have not seen some of the acids, you have not seen some of the chemicals you were taught in school. You read computer engineering, you read mechanical engineering, some of the machines you learn, they will only show you pictures, and you conclude in your mind that somebody who grew up in an environment where he was exposed to machine, exposed to technology from childhood, he grew up in technology. Some of them, if you read their biographies, it was their parents' computer that they used to start learning, programming their parents' computer. As far back as 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, that computer was not available for everybody. Some of these individuals, their parents had computer at home, and that's what they used to learn. And you came from a family that even the phone that your parents are using is something else. There are things you are not exposed to, and you conclude that not going to school is the best thing. I know recently there's this issue of Olodo uprising that somebody spoke about, that Nigeria glorifies those who do not go to school. That possibility is there. For instance, right now, BB Nigeria is ongoing in Nigeria. What are they doing on that platform? And somebody will come out of that platform with 100 million, with millions of naira. Yes. But at the long run, there is equally the place of education in human development, in character development. There is the place of education, especially if you come from a third world country. Education becomes a gateway out of certain conditions that has been programmed against you, condition programmed against you by the state, by the political elite. These conditions, what becomes your pathway out of it, no matter how long it takes you to come out of it. Education becomes a pathway out of some of these difficulties. Some of these billionaires you see, some of people like Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, you cannot override the place of talent in their growth. You cannot override the place of talent in their becoming who they are today. Some of them, it was talent, it was skill, it was nature, it was part of them. It was coded in them to become what they are today, to give birth to the companies that they've given birth to. It is part of their destiny. We must say it, because some of them, it's not that they were exceptional, but those inventions came out of them by other environment they grew up in, and equally by their genius. You can't look at Mark Zuckerberg and say it's not a genius. You can't look at Bill Gates and say it's not a genius. You can't look at Elon Musk and say he is not a genius. These are genius in environment that prompted the genius in them to come forth. So it becomes relevant to understand that these individuals, they're naturally talented, and they equally grow up in an environment that shaped their vision, that encouraged them to grow. So don't conclude, don't just look at them and the path they've taken and conclude that no, I will not go to school, I will become like them. You have to consider the environment you are operating from, especially if you're from Africa, especially if you are from a poor family. You have to be wise. You have to look at where you are coming from before you make some decisions. You see, even in developed societies, there are courses, there are departments that experience alone cannot give you access. Practical training alone cannot give you access. Let us take, for instance, in hospitals. No matter how long you have spent as a trainee under a medical doctor, a surgeon, a brain surgeon, no matter how long you spend as a trainee under him without going to the university to acquire certifications and knowledge, you will not have access into some offices. You cannot occupy some offices. You cannot head some departments. I discovered that in many organizations, those who went to school are given managerial positions, while those who have lesser education are workers. They labor, they work hard. In fact, a point will come that your education and certification alone will give you as a certain level of freedom, a certain level of rest. There are places, for instance, if you work in a care home, there are units whereby it is only certified nurses that do medication. And by reason of that, you have to go to university, go and study nursing, get your degree, get your certification before you come back and become a nurse. Now, you look at it, there are people that are in those places who did not go to school, or maybe who just went to secondary or college. You cannot be a nurse in a nursing home giving medication in some department without going through proper formal education. Even in the NHS today, there are places, there are departments that you cannot function without proper degree qualification. You can't function in some offices, in some organizations without proper degree qualification in a university. You can't have access to some places in life. You can't have access to some offices. You can't have access to some leadership and managerial positions in some organizations. No matter how long you have spent in those organizations, the years you have committed to service, if you do not have degree, you will not have access to some managerial roles. You will retire as a worker with a broken back. That is how it is. That is the reality, both here in the West and equally back home in Africa. So don't never you allow anybody to discourage you, to romance you out of going to school, especially if you're from a poor family, especially if you're from a poor society. There are some places on earth and in life that a non degree holder cannot lead. One of the criteria for you to lead, for you to rise to the top, is having a degree. One of those places is academia. It's academia. I have seen people who became professor without PhD, without even master's degree. But I have not seen a professor that became a professor that has never gone to school, has never gone to school, totally, never gone to school. And then he became a professor and is lecturing people. I have never seen. But I know that there could be instances of exceptionally talented individual that now look at it, exceptionally talented individual who either self-schooled themselves. But you can't just a non-literate, non-educated person. There are places in life you cannot access. And okay, look at it. Even most of these political officers, politicians, they might not have gone to school, but they will hardly take people that did not go to school to be their advisors. They will hardly make non-educated people the head of bank, the central bank. In Nigeria, for instance, we don't really know. For instance, as I'm sitting here, I don't know anything about my president. The person that is my president, I don't totally know anything about his past. Don't know who his father and mother, who they are. Don't know who are his siblings. I don't know the schools he has attended. Even the former one, Buhari, we can't tell anything about his educational background. But the question now is this: did they appoint anybody that did not go to school as the head of central bank? Did they appoint any person that has never gone to school as the head of their economic reform? No. If you go and check, 90% of the people appointed into ministerial positions, they have degrees. They are degree holders, whether genuine degree holders or fake degree holders, they have certification. They went to university. So it's important. You see, the pathway out of poverty for every nation is to combine what I may call hybrid education, an education that is highly theoretical and highly practical. Combine it from nursery with a system of apprenticeship. Students should be apprentices of people, of systems and structures where they want to work. In fact, from primary school, from colleges, we just have to restructure our education system to have secondary, colleges, where students after secondary, they will go for 2 years. I think we have it in Nigeria like polytechnic, but the structure of our Nigerian polytechnic is not that properly put in place like what we have here in the UK. And I believe that the polytechnic should be converted into like colleges in Nigeria, so that when somebody graduates from primary school, secondary school, then they can proceed to polytechnics. So we should have more polytechnics in Nigeria. More polytechnics. They should scrap out HND. HND should be scrapped because it has no function. So remove HND. If you graduate from secondary school, you must go to polytechnic, and in polytechnic, have something to do. It could be a skill, and the way they should organize it, it should not be highly, like you must pass. If you don't pass, you no. It should be more practical for people to be certified at the end of the day. Go through it, have a certification, and the certification should be able to allow people to have entry job into banks, into some sectors with your ND, with your national diploma, just diploma. You can have access to some systems where you can work. That can be restructured. Remove this thing called HND, collapse it into just ND. The moment a child graduates from secondary school, let him proceed to polytechnic. It is a gateway to the university. You can't go to university without going through polytechnic. So at the age of 16, children should graduate from secondary school. 17, 18, proceed to polytechnics to spend 2 years of practical education, and then collapse Nigerian university to 3 years. So from the moment you finish your from the polytechnic, whatever you do in your polytechnic, you should be able to extend that knowledge, to advance that knowledge to the university. So collapse the university structure into 3 years. You do 2 years in polytechnic, 3 years in a university. At most 3 years, you can be able to master any subject you are learning. 3 years. Then your master can be 1 year, and PhD can be 3 years. After 3 years, you are done with your PhD. When you program the structure like that, somebody can go to polytechnic, and not just to have polytechnics scattered without being equipped. Equip the polytechnics to be practical driven, so that from that polytechnic, in fact, you can have people that may not even want to go to university again, because whatever they want, whatever they need to equip them practically, they have gotten um, from the polytechnic, from the college. We have to think in this direction. If we must make our country productive, we have to think in that direction. So it is not all about formal education, theory. No, let us create a system where we have both theory and practical. In colleges, the student can spend in polytechnic, student can spend 1 year in school and 1 year in the field, and let it be properly structured, that within the space of, you come to class 3 months, 2 months, you are done with your coursework. The next part is to go out for the practical. We should emphasize this writing project before you graduate. No, let it be avenue for people to gain real life experience. We have to restructure our educational system. The way the educational system is right now, you cannot, like Peter B keeps saying, I want to move Nigeria from consumption to production. You can't move Nigeria from consumption to production without moving the educational system from consumption to production. Because a system that is theoretically driven is a consumption kind of educational system. Eh, There are there are colleges and universities that produce great things, innovate things. Universities should be center of innovation. Universities should be center of innovation. But when universities are only theoretical driven, they cannot become centers of innovation. And so long as they are not centers of innovation, society cannot be productive. Thank you so much for joining me. And make sure you like, you share, you comment. Thank you.